All right, we're back. Sorry, we had some technical difficulties and I had to restart a new stream. So we ended with Amber had read the full Tyler Perry quote. And, Megan, you were talking about basically that kind of at basically this time of age that ain't no I got time for that the paying only for the light bill. But I think that was the part too that kind of the two of the parts that got me is where he said like meet her at her worth.
Yes, but
Um,
Amber broke that down a little bit more
oh,
while
okay.
you were gone. So go again, Amber.
Okay, yeah, Amber, help me. Yeah, help me get caught up. I missed that part because that's the part that I was feeling some kind of way about that.
Well, I don't know if this will help, but but so I, I don't know. So, but I'm thinking if okay, so right before he said that's somebody who came to love you at your worth, he says that's not somebody that's beneath you. So I'm thinking when you separate that out, apart from that's not somebody that's beneath you, it gets way messier. Worth right there is an interesting word choice. But if I'm saying, listen, that's somebody that's not beneath you, that's somebody who came to love you. He added at your worth. I'm thinking he's going into like at your like you're being you being a worthy person, like a God given person of worth, not like
Oh,
your
wow.
worth, like your money where the money resides worth. I mean that
I'll
would
give
be.
you that. If you want to kind of help him, help save him a little bit. I mean, I
I'm just
definitely get
saying
like
because he
I
could have
get
just left it at came to love you,
just
but
leave it there.
yeah,
Leave it at your word. Because my thing is this. I mean, we know in kind of like statistically, right? I'm not traditionally, but like statistically, in households where Black women are making more money, then to me, he's making he. I think the thing that there's something that's not being said. He's making like two commentaries, right? He's speaking to the women, but what he's saying about the men. I mean, I don't know if I was a Black man. I feel he's saying something about them. He's basically saying to me almost like they don't have the capacity. Like he's making a comment about them too, and I think I would have a problem with that. Like, why isn't like okay, the money is less, and again, there's going to be some dynamics where that's just going to be the case. But he's saying something about Black men too. I think that's the part that's kind of underneath what he's saying. Like he make less, and he always going to make less, and only be able to pay the light bill and take you out every now and then. Because that was kind of another part going into the conversation. He said, and if he takes you out every now and then, so it makes me feel like this is a static. Because I can totally understand getting with someone, y'all work your way up together. Do you know what I'm saying? I mean, when I first my husband, he was still a resident. I know what potential he had to earn, but that is not what he was actively earning. He was a resident. I was an attendant. I was, so there was a huge discrepancy in income, you know. So I can get that part, but to me, he's specifically speaking to Black women, and to me, kind of Black men, essentially, is kind of what he's saying. And he's saying something about them. I mean, that's just something I just don't know if I can accept. I don't know if I could accept him saying, "Hey, like this is where y'all gonna be," not because that's what y'all talked about, but that's just because how it is. I mean, that's the part I have an issue with. Like, let's say if you have a stay-at-home dad, it's a different dynamic. So then, of course, that would make sense. But that's kind of not what he's saying. He's saying like if he's working, that's like the best he can do. I'm like, and that's just how we going on like forever. That's the part I guess I have. To me, he's almost saying like they have no capacity for growth and change. Almost like this is just the dynamic, and this is it. And I don't know if as a man if that's something I would be accepting of that commentary, because to me there's something that's not being said there.
it's so layered. There's so many conversations. I mean, you could pull in that old conversation that was earlier in the year with the Ayanla and whatever Ebony K. Well, I
I'm
forgot
gonna
her
put
name
myself
about the
on
bus
mute. I'm gonna put
driver.
myself back on
And
mute. Put myself on mute.
Amber, you're on mute.
my bad. There are just so many things in that. Like, are we saying, okay, yes, Black women are the most highly educated demographic right now? Are we're saying that that's I mean, that's
That
what that's
I mean that's
statistics.
fact. That's factual. Yeah,
That's
exactly.
fact. My thing is, I think when we miss in these conversations, and I think we might have talked about this in our own group chat, is people are just talking about jobs. A lot of this has to do with like, are you all on the same page intellectually? Like a lot of this has to do with like drive, ambition, and intellect more so than it has to do with a particular job you're doing at the moment. Because there's
Right.
always been a time when somebody's doing a job and then eventually they're doing a more in-depth job or they've taken on more leadership in the job or whatever. So I think we're leaving it kind of just not really fully fleshed out when we just are saying, what's he saying about the job? And I agree, like we have to say when we're having these conversations, what are we saying about black men? Like what are we saying, they don't have capacity? Because that's not true. I have a black son, he is very capable. I have a very capable black husband. I mean, I know very capable black men. Like so
Let's say about your son though. You
uh-huh.
have, he has the capacity, right? And so you have
Mhm.
expectations for him. So if he moved out at 22 and started living with someone just paying a light bill, you would be like,
Oh honey, no.
you, right? Because so that's
What are you
so I'm saying
doing?
he is saying something about to me like their capacity. Again, I know, and
I
it's
just
so
think
much more complicated.
it's just not reality. I mean, it's just not. That's just so extra for no reason. It really is. Like, really, let's think about this realistically. What relationship is going to be, what relationship realistically is going to exist in a world where you make just enough money to pay the light bill every month? Like, seriously, like, where, where do we, like, that's just, you're making stuff up for no reason. Why are you even presenting this? Like, I think it's a vast difference between, okay, I make 100, 120, you come in and make 50, or you make 30. Then that's a real conversation, right?
Right.
But
It's not just the light bill. You see what I'm saying? Yeah,
but
but
30,000, you can pay more than the light bill. Like, come on.
right, right. Yeah, you're right. That's a good point. Maybe he was just making that extreme just to kind of like make a point about it. But hey, what I always say is, depending on what demographic you're in, we got like a 50-50 chance that your marriage is gonna make it, right? How many marriages have we seen
Exactly.
that seem like it was they're perfect, they're compatible, they seem like they can kind of make it through, and it does not work. And even like older people, right, who've been married like 35 years, and then they end up getting a divorce. So I guess what I'm saying is just like to pretend like finances will, oh, like, yeah, love just gonna make it work. I feel like that's like a fairy tale. To me, that is like something from a movie. That's the part that I just can't get with the dismissal of it. But again, I think people can have different dynamics. If there are people who are legitimately stay-at-home dads because that makes sense for their family. So to me, that person is providing for the family in a different way. Somebody has to do that work. That is work. If you're going to be at home and raising your kids, think about how much money it is if you have to pay a nanny, if you have to pay somebody to clean your house, if you have to pay somebody for all of that domestic work that generally women are doing unpaid. That's a lot of money. I know right now to get a babysitter for my daughter, a basic babysitter is $20 an hour. You know what I'm saying? A good one can be $25 an hour. So if I had to pay somebody to do that, to take, every single thing that your kids need into the evening hours, think about how much money that is. That's a lot of unpaid work. So if somebody's doing the work, somebody got to do that work if you want to have your family structured that way. So if a man's in that role, then to me, he's still contributing, even if he's not quote unquote providing. So I see how it can matter, but like you said, Megan, that scenario just was not in the realm of realism, I think. Maybe that's why he said it though.
Right.
Like one of his movies. So
Right.
I guess that's my general 2 cents. I think
Yeah.
we know that some of the main reasons that relationships don't work is what is finances, is infidelity, is things being incompatible with children. So to think that that won't be an issue, I've seen people who seem to have very strong marriages, but finances can be just like the killer of things. So I think to act like that's not gonna be something that's up for the like, oh,
But
love will make it work.
it goes back to what Amber said though. It really does. Like, if you have a guy who is working a job that makes, 25,000, and he's okay with that, and you make 150, you're likely not going to be compatible intellectually. Like, that is real. It doesn't matter. The dollar amount at that point doesn't matter. It's going to be like, why are you okay with, because we all know the more you make, the more stresses that come with that position. And I'm stressed at getting up every day stressed, and you're just living your best life making 25. Like, oh, I don't get not a care in the world. That's gonna clash. that's gonna clash anyway.
Okay, so I guess, I feel like we kind of all are aligned. I think it's just like more of a complicated conversation. People are, in some ways, it's not complicated. It kind of like is what it is. And then, like you said, Amber, there's like those layers like to the conversation. But I think it would be interesting to have a conversation like that doesn't speak to the women. It's all, I feel like those conversations are always speaking to us. And I think having it like speak to your brothers. We speak to each other. We're the ones to Black women saying like, no, sis, you level up, you be independent, you don't depend on them, or you find this in your relationship. Like, I feel like we do speak to each other all the time. We have that communication. So like, fellas, like, I feel like fellas, y'all get each other together, and sis, we'll be over here getting us together because we got stuff we got to get together. We'll get each other together. We'll let the brothers get them together. And speaking of women, one of the other topics that I sent out was about, and so I'm going to say this. I don't know if y'all know who these rappers are, but the Sexy Red and Sukianna like controversy. So do we know what that controversy is, or like what that's about, or?
This is what Auntie Dad shows, because I'm
I have
like,
no idea what you're talking about.
Know. Who?
Okay, so
what
y'all see that y'all saw the picture I sent about that little funny meme about the girl putting that cover over at the VMAs, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So that is, let me be sure which one of who they are, right?
That
Because I
that
looked it
was,
up
I
here.
think that was
Because
Sukianna.
I have to be honest, I don't listen to their music.
Yeah, me either. But I just I know
Yeah,
who
that's
Sexy
her.
Red is just because of she was at the Buffalo Bills game the other night when I was watching football. So the reason I know. So yeah.
Okay, so so you saw her basically. So Sukianna was at the VMAs twerking on the red carpet, and I didn't hear no music. So I don't know if they had music in the background. So it seemed like it was just like spontaneous twerking for the cameras. And basically, I was reading some of the feedback here that she got, and she basically said, "Hey, they invited me. They knew who I." That was her quote. Her response was, "They invited me, and they knew who I was when they invited me." But she has been causing quite a bit of a stir because she went over to England, Great Britain, England. Oh, she was over there. And she was going around saying, as a matter of fact, I ain't even gonna be able to say what she was saying on this live because the live might be taken down. Essentially, she was walking around in public. How can I say this without basically saying stuff like, I want to have certain things done to my body parts, and I want to do certain things to other people's body parts. Like, she was just randomly saying it. And so they were videotaping her just out here saying this, and like to different, pedestrians. And of course you could, and I'm trying not to be vulgar. I see Amber, you looking it up, so you can probably, Amber trying to get the direct quote. But she was saying some it was pretty vulgar. I mean, to just be saying it out on the street. But okay, here's I feel like the cultural conversation though that's come from this, because it's not like we haven't seen women performers. I would say this is how I'm going to describe it. Even though I feel like, going around just a random pedestrian saying that stuff, clearly it's for attention. Clearly it's for shot value, right? Twerking at the VMAs, it's for shot value. I get it. We had Foxy Brown, we had Little Kim, we had Kaya Hood, My Neck, My Back. It's not like we are, we are so old that we cannot remember this, right? And there have always been those kind of songs and provocative women, every generation. But the conversation I'm hearing is more around these women are like representing all Black women. Like they are a bad look for us, like collectively. So I guess that's the question I would pose to y'all. That's the conversation that I'm hearing. These women are a bad look to us collectively. And that's kind of what's spurring a whole bunch of conversations. And I even, when I sent it, I said, is this like respectability politics? Because we know that women can be harmed or not seen as respected no matter what they're wearing, right? There's women who have a full hijab, fully covered, get assaulted. So it's not like that is going to protect you, but I guess, what do y'all think? Basically, they're saying they're a bad look for us collectively as Black women.
I mean, hasn't that always been the argument though? weren't we hearing the same thing with Lil Kim and Foxy Brown? And wasn't that the argument when we were, gosh, 20 years ago, 25 years ago? Um, I think that'll always be the argument. And now being the
The auntie, you want the
yeah,
aunties now being one of the aunties.
exactly, being the C. Dolores Tucker, listening to rap music now. I get it. I get it. And I try very hard not to be that person. I try to just be like, this is the way of it. But I see the negativity. I see how it can go both ways. I can stand in the middle and look at both sides and see and appreciate both arguments.
All right. Okay. So Megan's kind of, can see it. Amber, what's your thought about it?
I think I'm gonna pull in some history here. So we live in a very individualistic capitalist society, right? And so people of African descent are oftentimes like ancestrally more collectively bent. Like we have a we. Our we looks different, but we'll be the first one to be like, all skin folks ain't kin folks, because that's under the acknowledgement of a we, like a governance structure within our culture, whether it be African American or even broader, like that the diaspora. There are just certain things we're like, ooh, what are they doing? Because there's this like idea that we're all kin, right? Like we're in some form or fashion, we're all African, right? Of African descent. So I think there lies the, oh, she set people back. And I didn't realize this was the person until you said the London clip. Because I saw that, I was like, oh no, ma'am. Oh, okay, no. And I think
okay, so you know what she was saying. I was trying, I didn't want to repeat it because in case there's some younger viewers, but you said, okay. So you saw
I saw that clip
Google
and then
I just
and then I had to think about, ultimately, I don't know this woman's story. Ultimately, I don't know her background. I don't know what she is exposed to, who she's been around. I don't know who she is as a person. So I don't want to come across as judging her personally, but our culture has to be responsible for how our music sets a tone. I mean, I think that what did Faith say? She said the world needs more aunties, and I'm here to serve it. Yes, ma'am. So when I look at stuff like that, like we were having a conversation earlier, like there used to be conscious hip hop, but now it's so different. And we can even go back, like Megan said, back to when we were younger and the music we were listening to. Like I just like I was watching the Juvenile Tiny Desk concert, and Perry, my son was like, "What do you? Oh, that's that song. That's the Blank Bandit song." Like, if you know the lyrics to the song, like he didn't call it "Back That Thing Up." He called it the Blank Bandit from that one verse in the song. So I'm like, "What? There you go, right there." Like he picked that one
that is
Blank
so
Bandit.
Interesting. I so much
and that was that like one of the most popular songs? So that was like one of the most, and I'm talking about at a, I mean, just it was everywhere.
Mainstream.
We didn't even think that. I mean, didn't even think anything about that. Even that I remember when that "My Neck, My Back" song came out, and I'm talking about people clutching pearls. I'm talking about people were clutching pearls. But really, so this is kind of my thing. I don't feel like anything that they've said really or that they're doing is any more, like provocative per se. And I do think there's something about women kind of in that age group kind of coming into their own sexually, seeing their power, trying to like destigmatize it, saying, hey, I can hang with the boys. I feel like that's always been, we see that like every new woman that comes out, somebody has to occupy that space. And I guess my perspective is I don't think it's necessarily wrong with somebody occupying that space if that's what they want to do. Understanding how that ages. Do you know what I'm saying? Well, of course they can't see that, right? Because they don't have the perspective. That's why we aunties, we can see it now. But y'all, this is what I always say when it comes to the collective. Amber, thank you for bringing that up. Is that I just feel like we need just more representation. So, do other cultures have that representation? Those provocative people, yeah. Like you said, there's some cultural differences as far as how they move and think collectively, but then also they have so much other representation that is not like the predominant thing. They're like, okay, that's what they do over there, but the majority of us over here, and this is what we're striving for. And I just feel like as Black women, I want us just to see the full, depth and like just the diversity of Black women. Yes, there is some Black women who are in that age group typically who are kind of coming into their own, trying to be provided. Yes, that's a space. But just we don't have enough representation. Just other the stay-at-home moms, the single mothers who aren't having some dramatic situation. Like some people just didn't work out. They co-parent, they move on. Like we just don't have like enough normal representation of other Black women. I feel like that's what we lack. Like they'll have their time. There'll be another new group of women occupying that space in probably the next 3 years, right? There'll be some new people doing that stuff. We don't have enough other representation, just all the other spectrum of us. I guess that's just kind of my issue. Like, I mean, think about all the Black women and all the different ways that they are, and we just never get to see so many of them in media.
I think that was a big difference too. Now that I think about it, hearing Amber talk, now that I think about it, I think that is the difference from when we were thinking when we were riding around town in Amber's purple car, listening to all of these songs.
I got 5 on it. That was really to me like the one
every
that just
time I hear that song, I think about Amber every single time. But when we were listening to these songs, you have to think we also came into during that movement was also the neo soul movement. So we had the counter of India Arie and Erykah Badu and Jill Scott. So we had that, and they were massive. They were a massive counter. That weren't like not talking. I mean, of course, we still had Queen Latifah. We still had, that counter in rap, but we also had a major movement of we are just. I mean, India Arie's first song was Video. I'm not the average girl in your video. Like I am just a regular Black girl, So that counter is something that I think is missing now. That not saying that they're not there. I know that they're out there. I know that you can find them. I just think they're not mainstream. But that is the way that music is going now. Music is so interesting. And I'm a music head. I love music. I listen to music all day, every day. But I think one thing that's shifting in music is that it's just a singles based thing.
As opposed to like a whole album,
opposed to a whole album. Exactly. So you don't really get to know who the artist is. And so they have to come up with all of these online gimmicks, these trending gimmicks to bring attention to themselves.
That's true.
And I think that's what's missing.
That's true. Yeah, you are like the music, I would say like the music, who knows? Whenever I think of one of those shows with like the lyrics, I'm like, man, if I'm betting on somebody, I'm betting on Megan, man. If I had to call a friend, you be the one I call. Because I'm talking about, I remember some like 1990s country song. You were like, oh, this go like this. I was like, you don't know the words to the lyrics to that song. I mean, I do not know how you keep that in your head.
I have no idea. It's so stupid. Like I can hear a song like right now and sing you what lyric for lyric.
I mean, it is in there. It is in there.
It's so unnecessary. Like it's so unnecessary knowledge.
Well, speaking of that girl, I would say that girl of all Black women is Oprah, right? So I mean, she is like the original that girl. And my sis, I feel bad for her because it's like, I mean, I look up to you, Oprah, okay? And so, she's been, of course, facing this backlash over her and Dwayne Johnson, The Rock, basically coming out after the Maui fires. And basically, I think between the two of them, they donated like 10, I guess 5 and 5. It was like a $10 million that they kind of seeded into this, I guess, organization. And so they came out and asked like regular people to like contribute to their 10 million donation. And y'all, people been eating them up. And I feel like, I don't know, maybe it's just the circles I'm in. I haven't heard as much on the Dwayne Johnson side. Also, he just kind of went away. He didn't try to take up for himself. He didn't try to get on no news. He just like, I ain't heard nothing from him.
He's in Colorado with Dion.
We ain't heard a word from him. But Oprah has been coming out. She's put out several statements. She was on like a morning show I saw, basically trying to explain. And honestly, the response that I saw, I wish I could look it up, link it here. I wasn't able to find the clip. Her response to was kind of like, people going to say what they're going to say, or people going to kind of hate, and no matter what you do. But I don't know. I felt like that was even kind of insensitive to this criticism she got, which is, and I looked up Dwayne Johnson's like net worth. He's in the high hundreds of millions. Like he's richer than I thought he was. He's in like the high hundreds of millions, his net worth. And we know Oprah, like I said, you that girl, you in the billionaire class. So 10 million is really like literally nothing to them, to either one of them. So it's giving, I'm not sure what it's giving. I don't even know what my total thought process is. I'm gonna let y'all jump in, but that's why they were getting the criticism, because they're like, you both gave like $5 million, and that's like, y'all won't even miss that, but now you want regular people to kind of donate to this fund. So that's kind of why they were getting the criticism. What y'all think about that?
I think that is so bogus. I'm totally riding with Oprah and The Rock here. Like, and I wish she would have just hushed and kind of just, if I were Oprah with my billions of dollars, I would have put that foundation out and I would have went to the house. Y'all say what you want, you do what you want. Here's some money. I'm minding my own business. Because it's like I can't save the world. I cannot fix everything. Like, I came up with this plan, a plan to get money to the victims immediately in their hand. Like, this is their organization. She's not saying that 5 million is all I'm going to do. Like, this is it.
That's true.
She said, I'm putting in the first 5 million. Now you all donate. Because we all know that when these natural disasters happen, there's all these organizations that ask you to donate, and 2% of your money actually goes to the victims, and the rest go to pay the CEO. We know that. So she was just trying to create a fund that says, you trust me already. You know I'm going to do right by you with the money. If you decide to donate, here's a place to do it. If you don't want to donate, go sit down and trash. But don't get mad at me because I'm donating.
I think too, part of it, while she hasn't hushed, and I don't know how much y'all have read about this, but she was kind of, there's kind of this whole thing with like Hawaii and, rich people, very wealthy people coming in and like developing on the land, and people not being able to then afford to live in their like ancestral home places. So that's kind of, I think, in the background of this. And so, of course, she has a really big, why was I trying to say plantation? That's not what I'm trying to say. She has a lot of land. She has a big place out there. And I guess part of the reason I feel like she hasn't been quiet is because she's faced a lot of criticism for how much of the land that she has bought and, kind of put herself on. And so I also think that's why she was so visible, because I think physically she was out there, I mean,
and I also have beef with that too, because check this. She wouldn't have been able to buy that land if it wasn't for sale.
Okay.
She bought the land because it was for sale. It's not like that land nobody was going to own it. True. She bought it because it was for sale. Nobody else was buying it. So why is she catching flag for this?
I think I don't know probably enough about the politics of this. And if y'all do, please chime in. I'm like totally distant from like a trending story, how much I've read about it. But I think that there is a lot of, how can I put this? The readings and stuff I've read from like Native Hawaiian peoples is just around feeling like the colonizers are coming to take over. And from their perspective as indigenous people, if you coming from the outside in, you're colonizing, you coming in here to our ancestral area and kind of taking over. I mean, that, and again, I don't want to speak for people who are indigenous, please, if y'all know more about that. But I think she's just the most visible person. It's kind of like the rich people we don't know the names of. They still got the same amount of land. They own their property. They own it probably under an LLC. We don't know who it is. So I'm sure they probably would have beef with them too, but she's just a visible person. So I think that's why they got beef with her. That's kind of my sense of why she's being singled out. Not because she's the only one doing it, But I think it's because she's just the most visible person.
And their beef and their argument isn't wrong. Their beef and their argument isn't wrong. I'm not saying that they're wrong. They're not wrong. I get it. I get it. But it's still, the fact still remains that we are,
You basically saying there's a practical element to it. Like,
exactly.
Who sold it to her? That kind of
Exactly.
begs the question. Like, and I do kind of wonder that. I'm like, was it privately owned or did?
I mean, we're going through that same thing like at our homeland in Arkansas. Like you always battle with the land.
Okay.
Always. Like the other people come in and they swoop up that land, and now you have to try to battle to assess that, to repossess that land. There's always that battle.
That's true. And I, as a person who doesn't really like have that much of a connection to family land, and especially not like in the way that like indigenous people out there have it, I know I don't have a strong relationship enough to like speak intelligently other than just kind of the surface level. Amber, you got any thoughts about it? Megan, that's a good point though. It's a good point.
Yeah, I went to Hawaii, the Big Island, and Oahu, which is where Honolulu is, last August. And I'd already been once before, but this time, I guess after the wake of racial reckoning, I heard more from like tour guides and just general people about how Hawaiians feel about the United States colonizing them. Like, make no mistake about it, the United States colonized Hawaii. Like, they had their own language, they had their own customs, they had like, even when it's so funny because right before I left, I watched this documentary about how some oil or something was leaking into Pearl Harbor, which was damaging the water supply that the indigenous people have always used to fish. And that was going way back to World War II when they built that, it was the naval base there. So like if you go tour Pearl Harbor, like all that stuff is right there still. And they're still reaping the environmental hazards of the American occupation into Hawaii through colonization. So, and using that as a military base, a military stronghold or whatever. And so I got more information about that than my previous, like my honeymoon or whatever. No, it was a lot more front and center about how Hawaiians felt. And I got more history about the Asian people who had might have been from China or Japan that migrated there, and their relationship with Native Hawaiians. And so there was a big, huge history that I learned about that was very eye-opening. Even how the Mormon church has come in and had a huge, huge impact. Like we went to the Polynesian, it was a big Polynesian experience, and it was funded through the Mormon church. And I was like, oh, I didn't know that there was such a strong Mormon element. Then I remember, I think it's Mormon, but then I remember watching the show about Manti Te'o, who was a Notre Dame football player who got catfished a long, long time ago. And his family was a very strong family of faith. And I'm going to have to fact check that. But I think that I kind of put two and two together. I was like, oh, a lot of people in that area are very religious and they're very faith-based. And so I kept seeing these churches everywhere on these tours we were going. And there was just a totally different Hawaiian experience than what I had on my honeymoon. And so I think Hawaiian people are being they've always spoken out, but I think we're just getting more wind of it now. And we're understanding it more, and we're starting to see, like, I didn't know when I got there, I was like, oh, y'all don't want me here? Y'all don't want me to come? I didn't know. So that's the thing. And then on the Oprah and the island thing, I see that she and Dwayne Johnson in the LA Times said they were inspired by something Dolly Parton did. She raised money. Let's see. They were inspired by a similar fund set up by Dolly Parton after wildfires swept through Gatlinburg, Tennessee in December 2016, when 14 people were killed and it destroyed 2,400 structures. So I think they probably got together and was like, oh, what can we do? Dolly Parton did something like this. Can we do something similar? But millionaires, billionaires, wealthy people, they do buy islands and they buy a lot of land. Like, it's just, that's the reality of living in a world where there are very wealthy people. Like, there are people who own whole islands. One of them we were talking about earlier. Like, I mean, just, you can go buy an island if you got it. You can go buy and you can build it up and do what you want to do with it. They, like Megan said, they are for sale. The hope is that people would make sustainable choices. And the hope is that, now most of these are uninhabited, but back when people were colonizing, or there's some proof that maybe somebody would say that that's still happening. Of course, there are people who are still being affected, so, and are still feeling colonized. I did have a waitress tell me that she feels like people are pricing her out and her rent keeps going up and people are coming, and her estimation was there white families coming in, and this is her, I'm quoting someone, coming in, and wealthy people are coming in and buying property, and it's driving up the price of the property and the leases and stuff. But
I mean, let's just be real. Like, just, I think, like you were saying earlier, just about like living in a capitalist society, we do that fact right there about people moving in, like gentrification. I know here in Atlanta, like, it has become a lot harder to live here in an affordable way because so many people have left, other areas who come here who have different like levels of funding and stuff like that. But like you said, somebody is selling that for that price. You know what I'm saying? The other people who want to buy a house that's not, with no inspection and just, ridiculous like terms for like $800,000. And you want to, that how we know that house ain't nothing worth, but like maybe 350. But it's like people are priced out because we have people coming here from, like the West Coast, from Jersey, from New York City, their money just translates different down here. But I mean, is it their fault that they got it? Like there's a whole bunch of other systems and stuff in place when it comes to like pricing people out of things, that's like bigger, I think, than a kind of individual level. I do, and I don't know, this was kind of my thought though, like specifically, I feel like she got the Dwayne Johnson, I'm calling him The Rock, but because I guess he is half Samoan. Like, I think that was part of the optics. I know Faith had made that comment about the optics, but I feel like that was very intentional. Like, I'm sure she could have partnered with someone else, but I think she partnered with him because I guess like he has Samoan, like that. He American too. Like that's close. Like,
he was present. he
was present too. Okay.
So when everything happened, the two of them were down there, like in the trenches.
Okay. I didn't know if that was like for optics, since he is.
No, he spent part of his childhood in Hawaii.
Oh, he did. Okay, so he has connection. Okay, yeah. So okay, all right. So there's a little bit of a connection there. Well, as they say. I mean, I don't think that it's negative that they set it up because I haven't heard of no one else anybody else set anything up. So, at least like the money will go there. And like you said, Megan, she didn't say she wasn't going to donate anything else. I'm just always very conscious of, like just the income disparities. I think just like personally, I'm just trying to be very like conscious about that, even just with like,
but no matter what she did, she could have given 10 billion and they would say, why didn't you give 15?
Yeah, she's gonna get,
or she could have done nothing and they said, well, why did you could have at least did 5? It's kind of like no matter what she does,
yeah, she's gonna have criticism. Yeah, I'm still here for, what I'm saying, but I think, and hopefully she has been sensitive, like what Amber is saying, to some of the issues there too. I feel like if you're gonna be there, kind of understanding that sentiment, maybe doing stuff to like at least make your presence at least less intrusive, or maybe also contributing in some kind of way. Again, I don't know what she does there. I would assume that she's the kind of person who, like you said, Amber, would do it sustainably, trying to support the local population if she can, etc. That seems like what her character is. So, hopefully that would kind of show through there. I guess any other thoughts about that? And then since we had like a little bit of technical difficulty, I know we're kind of coming up on the hour, but I did have like a couple more topics, I think. And so if we can hit those, but I guess about this, anybody have any other kind of feelings or thoughts about our big auntie? That's our big auntie. That they've been dogging her out. She's been fighting for her life on these shows and comments and stuff. Like you said, she probably just need to go sit down. Just let your deeds speak for you and stop getting kind of tripped up. All right, so we're going to move on. We've been kind of on the trending topics. I know we had a couple other kind of more kind of like real life kind of parenting kind of day-to-day topics. I thought we hit those and then we kind of wrap up until next time. So, one of those, and y'all, and Amber, when you sent me this, that's why I included it about the uniforms, because very recently in one of my mom groups, and if you know they're like a Facebook mom group of some type, you just do not know how serious certain things can be. I'm talking about someone made a post about their young kid. I think who it sounds like, just from reading the post, probably has some like sensory difficulties. I don't know if they're on the spectrum or something like that, but wearing like a collared shirt, which in this mom's kid goes to the same school area where my kid goes. So their uniform is like a collared shirt of different colors, and then just different color bottoms. It to me of a uniform is pretty basic, and you can kind of make it work for you. And so, but I guess the kid did not want to wear the collared shirt. I guess it was causing like some sensory issues. And so she made a post, and y'all, I did not realize how strongly people felt about this on both sides. People that came in with statistics. I mean, people were taking this very seriously. So, I mean, and I'm going to say my thoughts about it, and I'm going to let y'all chime in about this school uniform thing. I'm going to tell you why I like it. Because I don't have to fight with my daughter in the morning about what she's wearing. And since she is 10, to me, it gives her some independence around her clothes. Like she knows what the bottoms are. She knows what the tops are. So to me, she has some autonomy over getting dressed. Like she can pick the colors that she wants. In our case, because again, they don't say what kind of material it has to be. So she has collared shirts, but they're all different. Some of it's more breathable, some of it's long sleeve. So like to me, there is some variety, but she gets to have some independence in getting herself ready. So that's why I like it. I don't have to supervise as much or check to see if it's appropriate. She knows she can pick from anything right here. Now, her personal opinion is that it's boring. And basically, like she hates the fact she can't like show her creativity in her clothes, but she'll do stuff like she wears little chokers, she wears stuff in her hair. She does stuff to kind of mix it up. So, but my thought is just like the ease. I guess I didn't realize people felt so differently about it because to me, it seems so easy. But I guess what y'all thought about, because people have some very strong feelings about this.
Wait, hold on, Leanne. Okay, that was when I was multitasking and I said school uniform. Let me tell you, this is the perimenopause, Brian.
Oh,
I meant dress code.
Oh, dress codes. Oh,
Dress
okay,
code.
okay. But
So that's tied in with uniforms.
Yeah, it's tied in. Okay.
What that meant was our dress codes outdated. Like
Our dress
because
code-
I've been in conversations about like school dress codes.
just in general.
Yes,
Okay. Well, let
which
me say something.
uniforms is an extension of that. But go ahead.
So far, my only experience, like directly so far, parenting is with the uniform thing as part of the dress code. So for me and where I'm at, I like it. So I probably have some other thoughts because I know who these dress codes tend to. I'm curious to see what you say because I know who this tends to target and what it means. But from my perspective, as it comes to uniforms as part of it, I'm like 100% for it. But that literally just because of the ease for me. That's my thought about it. But okay, we talking about it's broader. It's about dress codes too. I'm gonna come back and circle back.
Go ahead, Megan.
Well, I mean, y'all know how I feel about these school situations. I did my time. But the way I saw dress codes, we didn't. Aaron never had uniforms, but he always had a dress code, of course. But he went to an IB World School, high school, so they were very lax on dress code. They were very loose on what the kids could wear. Some kids, okay, we'll just say some kids got a pass, some others did not. But the way I see dress codes is that it's just preparation. I mean, you can't walk in. Every job I've ever had has had sort of a dress code. They've always, or an expectation as far as how you were to dress. when you go to work. And so it's the same. To me, it is just preparing you, especially on the high school level. It's just preparing you for what is next to come. Every job you potentially will have a dress code and expectation. So
Okay, so just so I kind of get some sense. So Megan, what would it take at his school, since this is an example of a lax situation? I'm imagining Amber might be one that ain't lax. His was more lax. So like, what would you have to do to get a dress code violation at his school?
So I would be sitting in the parking lot looking at some of these little girls like, I cannot believe they are wearing that to class. Like, like ours in high school, we would always hear about midriffs. And remember, we had one principal specifically that was real big on like midriffs and,
Okay.
yeah, exactly, exactly. And they were more lax as far as that goes. And especially I
Okay.
live in Texas, so it's hot.
Okay.
And so the short shorts, um, there was no, hands down to your, the shorts have to be longer than they don't necessarily do that.
Okay. All right. So this kind of give me some like kind of idea of
Yeah.
how it sounds. Okay. Pretty much if you came in clothes, you sounds like you weren't just overly ridiculous.
Right.
You'd probably be
Exactly.
fine. Okay.
Exactly.
All right, Amber. Now I get the sense that y'all just go probably not lax. So tell me what y'all
Well,
doing with.
so there's a few things. So my oldest daughter asked me, so what is the whole thing about dress codes? Because they disproportionately affect women. So I mean girls. So like what's the thing? Is to keep men from being distracted by our bodies? Like, is that the whole reason why? And so I remember one day I was dropping my son off, my oldest off, and I saw a girl where she just had on this. Like the only thing that was covered on her top was this. She had like a bra tube top on. And I was so shocked that I had two boys in the car, my son and his friend. And I was like, what? I know, what? Why is she gonna get coded? Like, what in the world? Like, who let
Just
her
high
leave the
school?
house looking like that?
High school?
Huh? Yes, it was high school, 9 through 12. No, this is a K through 12 school. And so on that side of the campus, it would have been, I guess, middle school and high school together. And I was like, okay, let me assess myself. Why am I feeling like that? Because I do not want to shame anybody. I don't want to be a part of body shaming. But I had this like literal visceral reaction of seeing a girl with a tube top on at school. And I had to ask myself, okay, if she would have been skinny mini, would I have said the same thing? Or it's because she was about the size of me? And I was like, I think it would have been either one, knowing me. But I had to take a pause because I live in California and I've become a lot more desensitized to skin. Like I live near Venice, I live near the beach. You just don't always wear a lot of clothes. There's a lot of maxi dresses, a lot of backs out, a lot of spaghetti straps, a lot of crop tops. I wear crop tops. I mean, I'm 44. So, I mean, it's just, I wear longer crop tops. I'm not trying to, but for me, my comfort level for me, the extra roll at the top, anyway, but, I had the conversation with my daughter and I said, okay, we live in this world, right? And you have to decide what kind of smoke you want. Like somebody could potentially misjudge you if you wear one thing, and you have to decide, hey, I'm okay with that misjudgment. I'm okay. I can rock with that. I am who I am. I'm cool. I want to wear this. But then you also have to decide what you're comfortable with. And what is the goal here? Like if I want to show a little skin, why? What is it? What's the motivation for the showing of the skin? And if you get to the motivation, then you pull it back, you might be able to see what you're needing. Is it attention? Is it you're trying to seek like attraction, like you're trying to attract somebody? Like, what is it? Like, okay, or it could be, I really like this outfit. Okay, well, cool. So it's like all these different things going on, and you have to kind of decide as a parent what you're willing to say. Okay, I really feel like you can be responsible in that. Go ahead. Versus a couple of times I'm like, nope, that crop top is too short. Wait and wear that to the party. Wear the longer one for school. I'm not budging on that. Sorry. And you just have to pull that sometimes too. And so I don't know. I just wanted to throw it out there with my son. It is pull those pants up. We're not sagging, but I have on basketball shorts underneath. Sorry. Do you understand why people sag? Do you understand how that started? Okay, the story behind people not having belts in prison. Okay, go into that. Okay, pull it back, pull them up. Okay, we're moving on. But that's why I just want to throw it out there, because those are some of the conversations I'm having. Is it just for men because they can't control themselves, and why are women doing this? And so, just what are your thoughts?
Kind of circling back around now. I think that, and I love this conversation because we cannot act like we know how things should be and we know how things really are. And when it comes to like safety, with our young folks, girls and the boys, when it comes to the safety of them, I think just being mindful that you're communicating. Like, to me, clothing it's like communication. And I wouldn't go swimming. I always say this, like when I had this conversation with my daughter, I wouldn't go swimming in an evening gown and high heels. Like, to me, the pool has it's like a certain uniform. There's certain things that I wear to the pool. Now, some people might wear an evening gown to the pool. I wouldn't. To me, I wouldn't do that. And like likewise, there are just some other places that I would wear certain things. And I do tell her, though, like, what you wear is communication. When you have on that uniform, anyone who saw you in public would think that's a kid who goes to school, because that's what you're communicating with that clothes. Like, we recognize that uniform, no matter what the colors are. When we see that at a certain time of day, we're like, that is what that is. And so I think just to me, just always, because I mean, of course, again, when we go through our kind of awakenings and we kind of come into our womanly bodies and our forms, we may want to communicate, like you said, I might be trying to attract somebody, but to me, it's just like, know that you're communicating something with what you're wearing. Like when she wore that tube top, no matter what her size is, that is communicating something. It could just be like you said, maybe she hot. Y'all are in, you in California, like maybe she just likes that outfit, but that's what you think about it. That doesn't mean how it's going to be interpreted. And I unfortunately, I think we live in a place where, particularly for women, we can't pretend like things do not get projected on us. And to me, it's like also in just the realm of safety. I hate that it has to be that way, but that is something that we have to consider when we wear stuff. So I think it's just like being very practical. But like you said, Amber, can you take maybe the feedback? Can you take maybe the looks you're going to get? Because I think as a woman, you get to a point where you realize, I don't want that attention, or I don't want those looks, or I don't want to have to explain myself or something like that. So, I mean, schools, I think, have to have some kind of like baseline, to me, hopefully that it's inclusive enough for people who don't always, some people just have what they have, so I think, Megan, I like the idea that it's pretty broad, because we have to respect that some people they're wearing what their parents have or what they can afford, so I think we have to be inclusive of that. If maybe they're only going to get clothes once a year, and so them shorts are going to be quote unquote too short beneath the fingertips because they've outgrown them, not because they want to wear those, like they've outgrown them and they don't have anything else. So I think as long as we're considering that when it comes to school, everybody can't get new clothes. I mean, I just sent a text to say, my daughter grew like really a couple inches over the summer. So a lot of stuff that she has is kind of coming up in a certain way, but we have the resources to replace that. But some people wouldn't. And they're like, this is the clothes you got, these are your school clothes. You got to wear these, so I think just being mindful of that too. So I think we'll kind of round out, and we'll finish up with our last topic. So we'll end on a serious topic. And I mean, Amber, I wanted to include this one about teen boys and Black teen boys and mental health, because this month is Suicide Like Awareness Month. I kind of Googled just to kind of see, just to catch myself up, and in that 15 to 24 age group of Black men, suicide has become the third leading cause of death. So the rates of that is increasing in that kind of young male population. And as a person, you and Maggie, y'all have young Black. I know Aaron is a grown man, but he's still young to me. So y'all have young Black men. And so I guess I'll kind of turn it over to y'all. I don't know if there's something like more specifically you wanted to say about that, but I did look that up like right before we got on here. And I thought that'd be a good way to kind of round out, especially since of what this month is. But just, I mean, any feedback or thoughts about that y'all want to kind of share, or what y'all seen, and, let y'all take that.
I'll let Amber finish. So I'll I don't know exactly where she was going with the topic, but I know that Aaron's friend group uh, recently one of his friends recently lost his life to suicide, and it was very difficult. 25. Um, and I think we are seeing it a lot more. And I we have a relationship, thank God, where I can tap in. I check in all the time. I'm always like, wait a minute, now what you doing? Wait a minute, what are you thinking? Let's have a talk about that. And even this situation, we talk about it a lot. Because the guy was he just he's having a hard time wrapping his brain around what happened, because he's like, this guy was always the one that got everybody together, and the one that always brought the jokes, and the one that always was the life of the party, and he's no signs. He had no signs. Nobody had any signs. And so I think that it is extremely important to check in. Extremely important. Um, and one thing that I have always used with Aaron from a little boy, I've always told him, if you don't feel comfortable talking to me, he always had his 5 go-tos. I always told him, you can talk to Leanne, you can talk to Thelton, or, my brothers, my sister-in-laws, and no questions will be asked. I trust them. This is your group of people that I trust with your life. I always gave him that out. I always told him, here's their phone number. Keep their phone number in your phone. If you ever need to talk to them about anything that you don't feel comfortable talking to me, whatever they tell you to do. I just because I think that that's important to present to your children, to have that core group of people that even, I mean, luckily he feels comfortable talking to me, but I always told him, these are your outlets. And I think that for people with children, with teenagers, and this was when he was in elementary school. I just always gave him that outlet in elementary school. So I think that it is important, with this being Suicide Awareness Month. I can't say that I'm seeing it a lot, but it is close to home. And I think that it is something to bring up. It is something to talk to your children about, because these kids on these video games, and I don't, we can't hear what they're talking about in the background, in the same way that, when the amount of times that we spent at each other's houses when we were teenagers, just having girl talks and stuff like that. Our parents didn't know what we was in there talking about, So they have their talks online. So just to check in every once in a while is just so important. It's just so important.
Man, yeah, that's wow. I didn't, of course, it's the first time that I heard about that he had a friend that, had a completed suicide. So devastating. Yeah, especially I think when it's a person, it's always hard, but when you really feel like you had no kind of connection to what was going on, like internally. But I will say, and then Amber, I'm gonna let you jump in. That often in the just my like clinical experience, sometimes it is those glue people, because they're giving out like so much, and they don't always even know how to communicate like what they might be needing. So it's hard for people to, again, we're not in anybody's mind to really know what's going on in there. But yeah, Amber, let me kind of know what brought you around to the topic.
Well, I'm a sports mom. So I am very observant, not being a competitive athlete myself, but very observant of what's going on amongst kids and sports. And there's such a big element of mental health in everybody's life, but particularly when you add sports into it, whether it's performance, confidence, whatever. And I remember when my kids were really young, they were like 8 and 10. They ran track, and I remember my daughter was at practice, and my daughter was running, and she did a really good lap or whatever. She had a really good time, but her time actually beat another little boy's time. And don't you know, after, or I think the dad pulled the little boy aside later and was like, don't you ever let her beat you again. Don't you ever, like, what are you doing? And he was crying. He was like, don't you cry. You can't cry. You get out there and you run and you hustle and all this kind of stuff. And I'm like eavesdropping. And I was so shaken by it that I called my husband and I was like, oh no, because I had always told my son, you can always cry. There's nothing wrong with crying. There's strength in tears, whatever. It's just like, yeah, that's not a thing. That's not in our family. Like I cry all the time. Like it's nothing wrong with tears. It's just an emotional expression, right? And so I was just like, I cannot believe his dad. Well, I could believe it, but I was seeing it. You know what I'm saying? And I'm hearing his dad just going at this son. And I'm like, oh, and the son was so talented. He was so fast. It just might at that moment, he was just whatever. He was just running, right? And so it got me thinking about the relationship between parents and their own mental health, and then athletes and their mental health. And then that's a lot of Black boys right there, like a lot of kids, period, a lot of Black girls. But I was specifically sensitive to it because I saw in that moment that Black dad talking to that Black son. It was very apparent to me that somebody had told him, you don't cry. And here he was telling his little 8 or 9-year-old son, you don't cry. And now what is that little boy going to tell his son if he has a son? And so he might not tell his daughter that, but he might tell his son that. Hopefully not. But it just got me thinking about just the trauma that we're just not as collectively that we've had to endure and deal with, and how that manifests itself and how we deal with sports, how we deal with our mental health. I also my kids go to independent school, and there have been several suicides at a particular independent school, and it's known for being really, really rigorous and very high achieving. And already in the last year and a half, there have been like 3 suicides. And so you're like, what in the world? This is just so heartbreaking and horrible. And so I was looking at it from a few different angles. The suicides weren't particularly, I don't think they were Black men, Black young boys, teen boys, but it just kind of made me think about how I wish that we got to a point where we could get our teen boys more on board with having conversations around their mental health. Like I'm trying to do what I can in my own house to speak to being able to communicate your feelings and having, like Megan says, people to talk to besides me. If you don't want to talk to me, here's another person, talk to them. You don't even have to tell me, like Megan said, that is such a good thing. Now, some parents might feel threatened by that, and that's a whole other thing. But I'm hopeful for this next generation that's so vocal about mental health I see a lot of that in girls though, but I'm wanting it to also transfer to the boys, because a lot of times our boys are not socialized to communicate their feelings as much. And so even in their friend groups.
It goes back. I want to point to what you just said, what you said about parents, and that going from from children going down. It does point to the parents needing to have that language and being healed themselves, and being able to say that, being able to recognize, no, this is anxiety. This is a panic attack that you're having. This is and this is how you should treat it. I think it goes back to, I just wanted to pinpoint that what you just said about the parents and learning from them. I think that's where we started, to be able to have that language to speak to it.
I do see, just like being on just different social medias, I do think I do have hope for the new generations, because I do hear more people just talking about that. Even just around like diagnosis like autism. I feel like people are just more open about kind of talking about like their diagnosis and different stuff like that. But to me, and again, we've all tried to we have literally all navigated adolescence, and we know how hard it is, right? You're having physical changes, hormonal changes. You're trying to figure out what you want to go out and do in the world. I mean, to me, it's such a transitional, challenging time. And I think that when you're in those situations where there's so high pressure, like we know what we have enough lived experience to know that like, yeah, this is important, but it ain't that important. You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, you want to do good in school, but it has a place, right? You want to do good in sports, but it has a place. And I mean, just the nature of where they are developmentally, everything's a big deal because it's the first time they've done it. You know what I'm saying? Like the first whatever, you know. I mean, it's like, you know, we've lived enough life to kind of have that perspective. And to me, that's why adolescence, I think, is so while navigating it successfully. To me, if you can just get through it successfully, it's a win. It's successful, whatever that means to you, because there's just so many different points we can get tripped up to feel like a failure and that we're not doing it right. And then just, you know, trying to fit in and have friends. I mean, just think about all the stuff that you're trying to navigate in like almost like a high school span of time. And then you're just kind of out in the world trying to navigate that too. And that's not discounting all the other stuff, the genetic predisposition you might have. You really might have a diagnosis, you know, all the stuff that you have to contend with and try to navigate adolescence. So yeah, I guess from my perspective, just from the like mental health side is, and when, you know, people will contact me and say like my kid is having these symptoms, and this is what I say, you know, like Megan said, you know, try to like, if you're not educated, try to like educate yourself on what anxiety is, you know, why it's more than just worry, you know, how excessive it can be, like kind of have some thoughts about it. You know, if your kid, it does have a lot of social and interpersonal issues, that it may not just be that they're awkward or shy, that there really could be something underneath that. I think particularly just in our community, I think just due to the nature of like the collective struggles we have had, sometimes stuff got to be real bad before we'll say it's bad, because we know what bad is, or we've heard about what bad is. So our perspective on it, you know, and I think even in a lot of immigrant families, that's the same too. When we talk about have a hard life, they're like, look, I can tell you what a hard life is, you know, compared to maybe like their kids who are here and haven't had to live like that immigrant experience. So I think to me, just like helping for parents to kind of keep that in mind, you know, we have a lived experience. That's their developmental period. Everything is big. The feelings are big because that's just how it is, you know, for them until they can kind of get, you know, some more experience under their belt. And then they're impulsive. You know, I think, you know, we all experienced, one of our classmates when we were, I think 10th grade, if I'm not mistaken, where someone did have a completed suicide when we were in high school. And it was very impulsive, you know, the circumstances around that. So I think just kind of acknowledging that when they have these losses or failures or bad grades or whatever, yeah, we want to have expectations, but, you know, how you do in high school? I mean, oh, you know what I'm saying? Like, and this is coming from a person, y'all know I was gung-ho about school, but it's kind of like, you know, in hindsight, it's like, okay, you know, kind of knowing where to put it. You know what I'm saying? Like, I feel like I had enough other experiences in my life. Like, I wanted to do good in school, but I also, like, I had to work and I had to do other stuff. Some stuff I'm just not going to be able to do because I got other stuff to do. I mean, it has to have its place. And I always like to debunk this when I'm talking about suicide or suicidal thoughts, that you cannot give somebody those thoughts by just asking the question. So, and even with my own daughter who has trauma and mental health challenges, I do ask her, do you have thoughts about not wanting to live? Do you have thoughts about wanting to hurt yourself? You'd be surprised at how many kids, what they would have to say about that question, or even just what they've thought about the question. I communicate, of course, you know, just who I am, I communicate directly, but I'd like to let parents know, or just people know, you can't put a thought in people's head to have that. If they're having that thought, it's because they're having those thoughts, you know, and you're just the first person to ask. Doesn't mean you necessarily have to get them to a mental health hospital, but don't you want to know if your kid's like, yeah, you know, a couple of days a week, I just wish I could go to sleep and not wake up. Okay. I mean, at least to open up the question, and so they can feel comfortable sharing something so serious with you, and you can kind of explore why. It might just be a fleeting thought. They may not be worried about it. It may not be nothing to worry about, but just so you kind of, like Megan said, you having those conversations to do, like, just I'm just checking in. You know, 2 weeks ago, yeah, you know, you was kind of seeming a little off. You told me you were having thoughts about not wanting to wake up. Is it still there? Let them know that that dialogue is open, that you're not scared. So many parents, what I see, they're scared. Well, what if they say they do hear voices? Or what if they say, okay, don't you want to know? Don't you? I want to be like, okay, so you're having that. What's that about? Or, you know, are you concerned about it? Do you think, you know, I think just kind of opening up that dialogue. And
let me chime in. Let me chime in just real quick. That I just want to throw it out there that for anybody watching, that therapy for children, therapy for yourself, A plus. Don't be scared to take your child. I am a huge advocate for taking children to see psychiatrists, taking children to see therapists. 100%, 100%.
It doesn't reflect negatively on you. We're past the days of
Absolutely.
like blaming the mother, and that's why the kids have the
Absolutely.
pathology. I mean, that's just a very old way of thinking. And so you don't have to feel like, again, I know some people get scared, but what if they say something? They may take my kids away. I promise you, nobody's trying to take your kids away. People want you to keep your kids. They ain't trying to take care of your kids. They want you to keep your kids and do the things that you need to do for them. But yeah, actually, I'll put some resources at the end of this live stream, since we're having this topic, just for people to be able to reach out if they are having some thoughts. They want to have someone they want to talk to. There's a lot of different resources that are out there. So Amber, thank you for bringing that. I thought that that was very timely due to what we this month is and stuff like that. So I guess before we finish up this Auntie Live Lounge, this first one, if we have any, we started out kind of rough, but we're going to end on a good note. If y'all have any final thoughts, and then we're going to wrap it up this evening. Amber,
my final thoughts is go CU Buffs, go Dion. Don't worry about it, Leanne. Don't worry about it. Let's just you know.
I asked.
The Texas Rangers are making me mad. Let's just jump on over here to football and cheer for Dion and
go Dion with his new glasses. We might bring that up next time. His glasses, they made, I think, 1.2 million in sales from. He said,
yeah.
Right.
I was like, no. Last night when that game was on so late, I was like, man, you could tell I am getting up there in age. Boy, they got to about the fourth quarter. I said, let me take me a nap. I'll wake up before it is.
Amber, you got any last historical context you want to bring into the conversation? I like this group though. This is a good mix. So, all right, thank you, ladies, for being here. And we haven't really decided how often we want to do this, but we plan to come back for some more Auntie Live Lounge conversations, and we'll do that next time. Bye.